You are at a party, and someone across the room sneezes into their hand. Then they reach for the guacamole. You feel it before you can name it. Your lip curls. Your stomach tightens. Something inside you pulls back, hard and fast, before a single rational thought has fired. That feeling has a name. It is called disgust. And it is one of the oldest, strangest, most underestimated forces shaping your life right now. You probably think of disgust as a reaction to gross things. Rotting food, bad smells, someone else's bodily fluids. And you would be right, on the surface. But underneath that reflex is something far more complex. Something that has been running quietly in the background of human civilization for hundreds of thousands of years, deciding what is safe and what is dangerous, who belongs and who does not, what is moral and what is monstrous. Your disgust reflex is not just about germs. It is a behavioral immune system, and understanding it changes everything about how you see yourself. Start with the basics. Disgust is one of 6 universally recognized human emotions identified by psychologist Paul Ekman across dozens of cultures with no shared language or contact. Anger, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise, and disgust. These are the original 6, the ones that predate writing, agriculture, money, and civilization. They are older than all of that. They are baked into the architecture of the human face. But disgust is unique among them. It is the only emotion that is fundamentally about contamination, about the idea that something impure could get inside you and corrupt you. And that idea, researchers believe, is what gave rise to something far larger than a wrinkled nose. Go back roughly 2 million years. Your ancestors are on the open savanna. There is no refrigeration, no medicine, no way to test whether the meat you found is safe or whether the watering hole is clean. One wrong meal could kill you. One infected wound could spread through your tribe in days. Survival depended not just on finding food, but on not being destroyed by invisible threats you had no framework to understand. So your brain built a shortcut. If something looked rotten, smelled wrong, oozed, or came out of a body, your brain flagged it. Avoid this. Do not touch. Do not eat. Do not bring it near the mouth. That reflex was not a choice. It was not a cultural preference. It was a survival mechanism selected over hundreds of thousands of years because the humans who had it lived longer and passed on more children than the humans who did not. Psychologist Jonathan Haidt, who has spent decades studying moral emotions, describes disgust as the guardian of the temple of the body. The mouth is the primary entry point for contamination, and the entire system exists to protect that entry point. This is why disgust is so closely tied to the sensation of nausea. Your body is not just warning you, it is preparing to expel whatever came in. But here is where it gets strange. Because at some point in human evolutionary history, your brain did something extraordinary. It took this ancient pathogen avoidance system and it repurposed it. It began applying the same feeling, the same wrinkled nose, the same stomach-tightening pullback to social and moral situations that had nothing to do with bacteria. Researchers call this moral disgust, and it works almost identically to physical disgust, except the contaminant is not a rotting piece of meat. It is an idea, a behavior, a person who has violated a social norm. Think about how you react when you hear about someone who betrayed a close friend for money, or a powerful person who abuses those beneath them, or someone who did something that struck you as deeply, viscerally wrong, even though you struggle to explain exactly why. You felt it in your body, not just a thought, a physical recoil. That is the same disgust system firing, just pointed at a moral target instead of a physical one. This connection between physical and moral disgust is not a metaphor. It is measurable. In a landmark study by psychologist Simone Schnall and her colleagues, participants who were seated in a room with a fart machine producing a foul smell rated morally ambiguous actions as significantly more wrong than participants in a neutral-smelling room. The smell triggered the pathogen avoidance system, and the system cast a shadow over everything in its environment, including moral judgment. In another famous experiment, researcher Chenbo Zhang found that people who were asked to recall an unethical act they had committed were significantly more likely to afterward want to clean their hands than people who recalled an ethical act. The mind was treating moral contamination as if it were physical contamination. The hand washing was a literal attempt to scrub away the psychological filth. This is what psychologists call the Macbeth effect, named after Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth, who compulsively washed her hands after murder. Guilt and disgust share the same plumbing in the human brain. So your disgust reflex is doing two jobs simultaneously. It is protecting your body from disease, and it is enforcing social norms in your tribe. And for most of human history, those two jobs were deeply intertwined. Behaviors that threatened the group's health, like poor sanitation, contaminated food, or contact with the sick, were also social violations. The person who ignored the rules of cleanliness in a tight-knit hunter-gatherer band was genuinely dangerous to everyone around them. But here is the problem. Here is where this ancient system, brilliant as it was, starts to misfire in the modern world. Your brain did not evolve to carefully distinguish between actual contamination threats and symbolic ones. It evolved fast in high-stakes environments where a quick wrong reading could kill you, but a quick right reading could save you. Speed mattered more than precision, and so the system is, by design, overly sensitive. It fires on things that merely resemble contaminants, things that look like rot, smell like decay, or pattern match to things that were dangerous in your evolutionary past. Researchers Paul Rosen and April Fallon conducted a series of now famous experiments demonstrating just how irrational this system can be. In one study, they gave participants a glass of apple juice, then dropped a dead but thoroughly sterilized cockroach into it, stirred it around, and removed it. The juice was then offered back to participants. Almost no one would drink it, even after being told it was sterile, even after watching it be sterilized in front of them. The knowledge that no actual pathogen remained made no difference. The symbolic contamination was enough. And another variation, participants were asked to drink from a brand new, never-used bedpan. Again, almost universal refusal. The object merely resembled something contaminated. The resemblance alone was enough to trigger the full disgust response. Your brain does not check. It reacts. And that reactive, symbolic, contagion-based thinking does not stay neatly contained to cockroaches and bedpans. It bleeds into the way you perceive other people. It bleeds into the way whole societies have treated groups of outsiders for most of recorded history. Social psychologist Mark Schaller and his colleagues developed what is known as the behavioral immune system hypothesis, which proposes that in environments where pathogen threats are historically high, people show stronger in-group favoritism, more suspicion of outsiders, and stronger conformity to local norms. The logic is grim but coherent. In a disease environment where strangers could carry unfamiliar pathogens, an automatic wariness of the unfamiliar had survival value. The data across cultures supports this. Societies in regions with historically higher infectious disease burdens tend to score higher on measures of collectivism, social conformity, and out-group avoidance, not because of any conscious ideology, because the immune system is running in the background and shaping what feels safe and what feels threatening. This is one of the ways a survival system meant to protect you can become something else entirely. When the disgust reflex fires not at a genuine pathogen, but at a person who is simply different, who moves differently, speaks differently, eats differently, or comes from a place you have never been, the ancient system is misfiring. It is calling a social difference a contamination threat. It is using the language of rot and disease to describe a human being. Recognizing this does not dissolve the feeling, but it changes your relationship to it. Because here is what the research consistently shows. People who score high on disgust sensitivity, who feel disgust more intensely and more easily, also tend to hold more conservative social and moral views. They are more likely to support strong in-group norms, more likely to react harshly to violations of purity or tradition, and more likely to feel visceral discomfort at rapid social change. This is not an insult. It is a measurable, replicated finding across multiple studies by researchers including Yoel Imbar, David Pizarro, and Paul Bloom. The gut feeling and the worldview are not separate. They are wired together, and people who score low on disgust sensitivity tend to be more comfortable with novelty and outsiders and more tolerant of social rule breaking. Same wiring, opposite tuning. None of this means disgust is wrong. or that people who feel it strongly are bad. It means you are carrying around a 2 million-year-old piece of software that was built for a world that no longer exists, running it in a world it was never designed for, and wondering why your gut reactions sometimes do not match your values. So what do you do with this? The first thing is to recognize the feeling. When something triggers that visceral recoil, that lip curl, that pullback, pause. Ask what is actually being flagged. Is there a genuine contamination risk here? Or is the disgust system firing on a symbol, a category, an unfamiliar person? The feeling is real. The data it is feeding you is not always accurate. The second thing is to understand that disgust is one of the most powerful moral emotions you have, and it does real moral work. When something truly violates human dignity, when cruelty is dressed up as policy or exploitation is normalized as efficiency, the revulsion you feel is not a glitch. It is the system working as intended. That pullback is information. It is telling you something has gone wrong. The challenge is knowing which disgust to trust. And that is a question no one in human history had to ask, because for most of that history, the disgust system and the social environment it ran in were closely matched. Today, they are not. The world changes faster than evolution does. Your nervous system is running ancient code in a radically unfamiliar environment. That thing you felt at the party, when the hand met the guacamole, that was 2 million years of survival intelligence firing in one fraction of a second. It was your brain protecting you from something it could not see, doing exactly what it evolved to do. The real question is not why you felt it. The real question is whether you are still letting that same system make decisions your ancestors could never have imagined.